afternoon, evening, depending on where you are, everyone. We're talking to you from Boston. This is Allison Ryder. I'm the Content and Communications Lead here at Continuum. Continuum is a global innovation design firm, and we're focused essentially on improving lives through product, service, and medical innovation. So we'd love to thank you guys for joining us today for this webinar, Humanizing Technology Trends Shaping the Future of IoT and Connectivity, with Kevin Young. Kevin's an SVP of Product Experience here at Continuum, and he's worked with clients including the MIT Media Lab, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, and American Express. I know he's eager to share his thoughts on trends and how they're influencing future connected product experiences. So we'll go ahead and get started. Kevin, let me pass this over to you.
So thanks everyone for joining today. As Allison said, I'm really excited to share some perspectives that we have and some things. I think the best way to look at it is some things that we've learned through the project work that we've done and the interactions that we've had with consumers. So the slide that hopefully everyone can see at this point is I'm curious how many of you might be familiar with this. This is a recently filed patent from Amazon, and it's showing an AFC, or what they call an Airborne Fulfillment Center, which floats 45,000 feet above the ground, and it sends UAVs, unarmed autonomous vehicles, down to deliver packages. And this is a brilliant idea because, as it turns out, a lot of the power loss in drones is with takeoff and landing. So if you float the fulfillment center above your head, it doesn't require as many steps of landing and takeoff for drones. But the real point here is that who knows if Amazon is actually going to pursue something like this. I think the more fascinating thing is just what's happening with technology around us. It's really moving at, I feel, an unprecedented pace in terms of what sensing, monitoring, data collection and assessment is happening today. So it is certainly a fascinating time to be alive and to watch this happen. And there are some scary parts of it. So this is a study that just came out last month from Oxford University that, as you can see, 47% of U.S. jobs could be automated within the next 2 decades. And if anybody follows what Boston Dynamics has been up to, really an amazing company doing some, I think, terrifying and also beautiful things with robotics. So this is a handle robot. It can lift 100 pounds. It can move at about 10 miles an hour, jump vertically 4 feet. One of the really innovative things about the solution is that it's using, as you can see, it has legs and wheels, which makes it much more agile. And, as robotics develops, what is this going to do for all of us and for our careers and I guess for the careers of our children? And this isn't just about robotics. It's machine learning and what's happening with AI. And as humans, we're also doing interesting things to ourselves. So this is a group of people that are body hackers. So they embed electronics into their body for fashion, experimentation, recreation, and utility. So in this case, someone has implanted an RFID chip beneath their skin that will unlock their front door, unlock their phone, unlock their car door. It has different functionality. And it really, makes you think about the fact that over the last decade, technology has been getting closer and closer and closer to our bodies. It really just seems inevitable that it will be, probably very shortly, embedded inside of us. And you might be aware of who this is. This is Neil Harbison. He's a colorblind individual, and he convinced the doctor did it anonymously, by the way, to implant a camera into his head. So this is actually surgically attached, and it allows him to hear colors. So what the camera does is that if he sees a large field of green, it will play a C note, or if he sees a fire truck, it'll play an A. But he's really been able to hack his body to overcome a condition that he has. So this is a fascinating time. It's an amazing time to be alive, I think. But I have kids. I have 3 young kids. It does also make me wonder, where's this all going? And and I tend to be an optimist. I remain optimistic that we'll figure it out. But we also want to make sure this aligns with our human values, because there are the opportunities for this to not go in the right direction. And of course, we've all been talking about the Internet of Things, and what this means for this conversation is, again, as we think about that, the power of our world to connect around us and to connect the things around us, there is potential, a lot of potential, a tremendous amount of potential, but it hasn't arrived yet. And, you know, the Internet of Things, around here at Continuum, we sort of lovingly call it, it's closer to the Internet of crap currently. You know, there are solutions out there that are providing true value, but in many cases, there are products that just are not delivering on what we need. You might be aware of this product. It helps you understand the number of eggs you have in your refrigerator at any time, so it helps avoid that painful process of opening your refrigerator to look at your eggs. You know, does the world need this product? Maybe not. I do applaud the effort. You know, many of these companies are really at the leading edge of helping us all figure this out. And so as is true with any nascent technology, we'll get a few things wrong, and we'll get a few things right. And it's also doing really fascinating things to challenge our social norms. So I'm personally fascinated by virtual reality and augmented reality, but you know, we really have not figured out how this is going to meaningfully fit into our lives and allow us to interact with each other as humans in a better way. And we definitely saw a lot of this at CES this year. So, you know, connectivity was prevalent, to say the least. And this is a toaster from Griffin that is, I believe, the world's first connected toaster. So through the app, you can dial in the desired darkness level of your toast, and it informs you when your toast is ready. Again, I'm not trying to pick on this product. I think it's great that we're pushing to explore kind of the range of options that connectivity in the IoT space can offer us. But it does question whether or not there's value in these. And even when we do get it right, even when we create a product that has real potential to provide value for us and our families, we as consumers are skeptical. And this is a recent study from Gartner saying that 2/3 of consumers are worried about the technology eavesdropping on them. It's a very legitimate, I'd say, in my opinion, and a real concern that people have. So it's fascinating to see where this will go. And probably my favorite example is that this is a real product that is being developed by a company in the UK. They say it's going to come out this summer, and they call it the first fitness tractor for men, I'll just say. And if you want to learn more about it, I encourage you to research this on your own. But it is a legitimate product that's, well, they say this is coming out, and evidently the world needs it. But again, where does this go? How are we going to control this and look at the trends and the shifts that, as designers and innovators, which we all are, we have the power to influence this. And I consider myself to be very fortunate that I work at a company called Continuum, and this is what we focus on. We focus on really deeply understanding human values, and then making the connection to what technologies could facilitate that, rather than looking at technology and trying to push it out to find a use for it. So the way I often describe it to friends or family, you know, a big part of my job is really to humanize the technology that's out there or that will be coming soon. And the process that we take to do this is we call it backcasting. And many companies, understandably, are focused on the next quarter, the next year. Really, they're kind of forced into a position of forecasting their upcoming product and services from the status quo. And this can lead to more innovative ideas. Certainly, it can lead to greater impact. But we feel the greatest breakthrough is understanding the needs of people and then creating this ideal state, which initially might seem very daunting and unachievable for an organization, but you can step back from that. So once you've created that ideal state, you can then come back and think about, well, we do have to produce products and services in the near term. Let's just make sure those are on the trajectory, or acquisitions that we make or partnerships that we make as an organization. Let's make sure that is on the trajectory toward that ideal state. And we've done this with many clients, and we found it is a very effective way to break out of the sort of that cycle that is natural. And we've done this in a lot of different categories. And as I mentioned at the introduction, really what I want to share today is, so we've gleaned things from these different types of projects, and we've seen trends and shifts that we think are really important, certainly, and that we want to share. I won't go into any of these. I'll go into one of these, sorry, in great detail or greater detail. But just as an example, education is certainly higher level education is certainly a hot topic right now, and we were lucky to partner with a university thinking about what is the core curriculum and what is the onboarding process like for new students. And there were some hypotheses that it might be around technology. It could be an improved website experience. But in the end, we realized it was primarily about understanding the needs of the not just the students, but all of the stakeholders. And if you really understood what the professors are hoping to achieve from their career, you can create a curriculum that delivers on the very different needs of the millennial and the very soon going to college Gen Z right behind them. They certainly have different needs than their parents did or their grandparents. And we've also done projects with thinking about the future of first response, also a very important topic in everything that's happening in the world today. And here too, there was a tendency in the beginning of this project to think about technology solutions. So how can you provide tools, virtual reality, augmented reality for fire, police, EMS, to help them do their job better? And the reality is that one of the main breakdowns, especially in an emergency situation, is that these three units weren't able to communicate effectively with each other and share information, and also follow a patient through as they're handed off between these different groups. So we found in our solution a backcasting approach where we could create this ideal state and then understand how we can help these divisions communicate more effectively together. And then the future of dying, which is a really important topic, and again something that we've been hearing a lot about. We worked with a company to help think about end of life and create experiences for people that could really make that as good of an experience for them individually as possible. And thematically, in this case also, our client at first was thinking this might be a technology solution. It might be a wearable device that the family member can press, and it will alert a medical professional of their wishes in terms of end of life. But as we delve into the project and really understood the individuals that are part of this, it was another communication challenge that an elderly family member might communicate with their family what they would want, but then when the time came, when that very difficult time came to make a decision, the family might not understand fully why they wanted that decision, or they might not honor it. And so we developed a toolkit to help these different groups communicate with each other, which is, for many families, a very awkward and difficult conversation. And the project that I wanted to dig into in a little bit more detail is around the future of family and the role that technology can play there. This was a project that we did with FisherPrice, and FisherPrice is an amazing company. They've been in business for 85 years. Some people might not know this, but they're very focused on ECD, early childhood development. And they've been creating products for 85 years that help children learn, and often learn through play, which is very important for young children. And FisherPrice is always trying to evolve who they are and what they offer. And they were thinking about what role technology can play in helping with families and early childhood development. And it's a fascinating project for a lot of reasons. And again, it's a really important topic right now because screen time is a thing. If any of you have children, you know that it is a struggle to understand how to provide value through screen use, because screens can provide more educational benefit in many cases than I can, because I'm not around or I'm at work. So there's a lot of apps, there's a lot of tools that do provide great educational value, but there's also a lot of junk out there. A lot happening on, of course, through apps and online experiences that we don't want our children to be exposed to. And I'm personally fascinated that not much has happened around health monitoring for families. And it will. I mean, it certainly will. You can be certain that in the next 5 years or less, we will know much more about our children's health. With what's happening around childhood obesity and diabetes, wouldn't it be wonderful just to have a better sense of our children's overall activity level and nutrition? And that's just, again, speaking as a parent, I'll say that's incredibly powerful, the potential of what's out there, but really no one has tapped into this yet. And to do a project like this, we bring in subject matter experts. So some of you might know David Rose. He's an MIT lecturer. He is really a pioneer in the area of the Internet of Things. He, I think 15 years ago, he created one of the first connected devices I'd ever seen. And he continues to really push the boundaries of what the role that technology can play in our lives. So it was very inspiring to speak with David as part of this project. And you can see the quote on the screen that it was great grounding that he reminded us that the future smells like wood. And this became sort of a mantra for the project, because we, as we developed technology solutions, we did see opportunities to embed technology in a very strong way. But we thought more about the screenless future and where will screens go, and how can you provide information without being overly focused on screens. And there are really cool things happening out there. So Magic Leap is a company that's been thinking about this, and they're developing new technology, which they're very, very secretive about their technology, but they have an ability to basically project an image onto the retina, which will allow you to have these digital experiences without the screen getting in the way. And there are certainly skeptics out there. There's question of whether or not Magic Leap is really onto something. Obviously these are just illustrations and renderings of what the technology might be, not prototypes at this point. But they have raised $4.5 billion. Google, Qualcomm, Alibaba are investors. So I think personally, I think they're onto something, and whether they are or not, the point is that this is what we're all looking to experience. And a product that just very recently came out is this project from Sony, and basically it's called the Xperia Touch, and it projects an image onto any surface, and that image becomes essentially an interactive screen. So it's one step toward that screenless experience. I would very much like my child to be interacting with something on the kitchen table while we're all making dinner, versus having them locked into the tunnel vision that happens if they're on a phone or a tablet. It allows for more social interaction, for sure. And you can just imagine, whether we get to Magic Leap's vision or not, that this is where things will be going. And the other thing that we certainly want to remember is to not lose sight of moms and dads and what it's like to be a parent. And one thing that we talk about at Continuum is that there are many core values that don't expire. The parenting will change, that's for sure. But being a parent 50 years ago is probably pretty similar to what it's going to be like 50 years from now in terms of what parents care about. They want to raise strong, healthy, resilient children, and I predict that's going to be true for a long time. So for this reason, we wanted to make sure we maintained that, that emotional connection and that social interaction. So this led us to start to think of solutions. Again, leveraging technology, but doing it in a meaningful way. So with where e-textiles have developed, you can imagine the advantages of an e-textile blanket where the technology is completely invisible, but it is measuring the temperature of your baby. So the blanket might change color if your baby is starting to get a fever, so you can take preventative action. We also thought about ideas. I think most families globally are aware of the idea of marking your child's height on a wall, which is just a really wonderful experience for my family. And we thought about how we could make that an even more engaging experience and combining physical and digital. It's still marking on a wall, but it opening up a digital window into the looking at your child at different heights. You could almost imagine taking your hand and scrolling it down the wall and seeing your 7-year-old at what they looked like or what they sounded like. And of course, that's how they were when they were 1. So just making these experiences even more enriching for the family. So as a major output of this initiative, which is, I think, often true on the projects that we're involved in, we created a short film. A film can really help express this future ideal state and get our clients engaged and excited about what this might be. The film's, it's brief. It's about 3.5 minutes, so I'll share it with you. There's a lot, I will say there's a lot of content in the video. It's a lot to take in. So I'll give you just a quick preview of sort of the director's cut of a few things that you'll see. In the beginning of the video, you'll see the children sleeping, and they're wearing e-textile pajamas, which are monitoring just basic heart rate, depth of sleep. You know, there is certainly data overload with parents, and you want to be very careful to not, give parents too much information that they're staying up all night staring at the respiration rate of their child. But we did see a possibility that a product by the bedside could let the parents understand the depth of sleep for their children. And these e-textiles would also be monitoring the parents. So if their newborn, Frank, was just stirring and just about to wake up, it could wake up the parent that's in the same stage of depth of sleep. And that way, not wake up the whole family when Frank eventually, inevitably, wakes up screaming. And we tried to bring in very natural materials. So you'll see in the story that Clara, the oldest child in the house, is building a felt owl, but this felt is, again, invisibly embedded with electronics so that when she's done with the owl, she can build it in her home. And then playing with it later that day triggers an interactive experience with other toys that she's created, other characters. And again, this is very important in early childhood development in socialization and role-playing. It's a really important developmental stage for kids. And then at the end of the story, you'll see that she's reading with her mother, and that owl that she created just that morning has appeared in her book. So really these connection points and, going beyond these sort of one-off IoT experiences to think about how this can create a more rich experience for the whole family. And there are certainly, tremendous educational opportunities when Clara and her brother see a bird through the window. They can touch on it and reveal the word, the word and the spelling. And then later, when he reaches a milestone of properly stacking the rocket stack, that bird that he reacted to so positively appears at the top of the rocket stack, which is really the added incentive. And I talked about nutrition. FisherPrice isn't a company that is deeply focused on nutrition, but you could imagine there being a potential there. And again, imagine if just the tray that your child is using can recognize, track, and also measure the amount of food that the child is eating. And I totally appreciate that this can get really creepy and invasive. So it's a delicate balance. But again, as a parent, I had lots of concerns when my children were young. I still do, that they weren't eating just generally enough, and they weren't getting the right kinds of foods. And I think in a non-creepy, overly invasive way, as a parent, you can track this information. And then you'll see the hearth of the home, the centerpiece of the home of this tree, which captures information and is a collection point. Again, with all of the data and information and even photos and videos that I have of my family, I would love if there was one central place that was able to curate and collect the best information and the most meaningful information about my family. And then this tree can also act as that measurement marking system that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to play the video. So it's exciting. It's fun to create a future vision like this, but what was super important for us is to not make this science fiction, to really, all of the technologies that we're showing, even, crazy holographic images are based on understanding what can come, what can be. We were thinking this project might be 5 to 10 years out, but really most importantly is that backcasting model. And FisherPrice probably isn't going to run off and start creating the holographic walkers, but they're thinking about the role the technology can play and starting to develop products and services that are on that trajectory. And this is true for all of the clients of ours that are thinking about these future of scenarios. And again, we continue to remind them that, sort of watch out for that temptation of focusing on technology first. So from all of this, and where this is all kind of wrapping up today is, we've worked, Continuum has been around for 35 years. We've worked in a lot of different spaces. And through this, we start to peel off different behavioral technology and business trends that we think are really relevant to our clients. And so we look at trends, I think, in a different way than some do. And really through this cultural business technology lens to understand the intersections that are there. And these roll up for us is really elevate to something larger than a trend, which is a shift. It's a larger movement that is the culmination of these areas coming together. And based on the work with FisherPrice and these other future of projects, I want to share a few of those with you today. And we have a group at Continuum that does focus on this, and they're called Next. So it's an internal team. I like to think that everyone at our company is always thinking about trends in the future, but we do have a dedicated group of people that are really good at this and have created some great assets and thinking that, so with every project, it's not like we're starting from scratch. So I'll share 3 of these shifts with you. And again, each one is made up of a culture trend, a business trend, and a technology trend. So in terms of culture, parenthood is certainly changing, and it's no longer a given. Being a parent is less of a life stage, and it's really more of a personal project among many other projects that someone has. It doesn't define you anymore as a parent. It's more about it being a very important aspect of your life, but one of many important aspects of your life. And millennials are thinking about really taking that notion of it takes a village and pushing it. Helping, having friends help raise families, an extended family, and different family arrangements, certainly. Gay couples, older parents, intentionally single parents. It's really the unit, the family unit is shifting right before our eyes. And the really where this rolls up is that parents are thinking of children as, again, an incredibly important part of their life, but they don't want it to dominate and completely take over their lives. There's also a lot happening around consumerism being more of a political act, and people being very thoughtful about how they spend their money, where they spend their money, researching companies, and really caring about them. And this is more true for millennials and Gen Z up and coming than it has been for other generations. We've, in the past, other generations have more focused on buying products or services that they need, that they trust. But today, consumers are thinking more about, do they believe in that company? And they're thinking hard about buying, and they're going through a process of crowdsourcing to make sure that is the right decision. And so with all of this, companies can't get away with it as much. There's much more visibility and transparency. And then everything is becoming real time. So you can be on the train in the morning, and you can be searching, trying to understand what that strange mole on your back really means. And we can thank Google for this, that, that information is there. Cyberchondria is a thing. We're literally making ourselves sick with worry as we research and get bad information from the internet. I thought it was interesting that last year Google launched a new health-related search functionality, and they recruited physicians and experts from the Harvard Medical School and Mayo Clinic to evaluate medical conditions that people most commonly ask about and provide credible, trusted, high-quality medical information for those individuals. So, Google, of course, knows that this is a thing, and they're focused on trying to figure out how to help and get quality information to people. So we look at these trends coming together, and again, laddering up to a larger shift. We see the shift around life being amplified. There's obviously the quantified self. People have been talking about that for a while, but what's next? What happens as our online lives hold just as much weight as our real lives? And that line becoming blurred, again, especially for millennials and then Gen Z. It's really interesting that millennials focus a lot of effort on curating their online experience. And they want to make sure that the Facebook or Snapchat, the tools that they're using are the best possible version of themselves that have been, sometimes doctored to get that way. Gen Z doesn't see it that way. They're the first generation to grow up with the internet completely part of their lives, and they don't see that line. So they publish everything, and there isn't that process of curating. They Snapchat more than 10 times a day, and really are an open book in terms of what they're putting out there. So for us at Continuum, as we're developing products and services, we're thinking about that Gen Z behavior and obviously the access to information and the changing family unit. So as we develop projects like for FisherPrice, that helps us think about the types of experiences that we might want to create for families. The second shift that I wanted to talk about, again, starts with culture. And identity is something that isn't assigned to you anymore. It's something that people discover along the way. And this can translate to simplicity and to all the way through to total customization. So, you might find one of your boys wants to wear a dress, but you shouldn't jump to any conclusions about that. This is the self-expression that's happening today with some of the younger generations. And I talked about body hacking and transhumanism, and so we're putting things into our body to make us better and to make us the best possible self, and really to be an individual, which is super important. And then there's just the economy, the business around wellness. Wellness is certainly a thing. We all are very aware of it, but it's predicted to be the next trillion-dollar industry. And this is really about people being proactive. So, when my parents went to see a doctor or thought about their health, it's when they were sick. For kids, for the millennials and the Gen Zs, they're really thinking about this more holistically. They're thinking about mental and physical health together. And they're also thinking about what they're eating and drinking. And it's amazing to me that we still know so little about nutrition and about the quality of the food that we're eating. And you can be sure that, again, in the very near future, we're going to have much more information. And I imagine we'll look back at this time in history and we won't be able to believe, it's sort of like where smoking is today. We won't be able to believe that that's something we used to do to ourselves because of just how incredibly unhealthy it is. And then machine choice. So, machine learning, how is that going to affect selection, choosing, shopping? If I go on to Zappos now, I get, even once I narrow down my selection, I still get 1,000 choices. Whether we like it or not, our Zappos is going to know more about me. They're going to know that I have a job interview in 2 weeks, and they're going to narrow down my selection. And it really makes you start to think more about what jobs will be outsourced. Shelley Palmer, which if you don't follow Shelley Palmer, I highly recommend it. He recently wrote an article, and he was predicting the first 5 jobs, white-collar jobs, that will be taken over by computers. And he said it was middle management, commodity sales, report writers, accountants, and doctors. And some of those may seem more obvious than others, but it really is amazing what machine learning is going to do to the future of the job market globally. And this is something that I think about. I think about my kids aren't at college age yet, but it's certainly, on my mind of what jobs will be obsolete within their lifetime. And we see this all building up to what we're calling auto collaboration. So robots are here to stay. They're going to be increasingly becoming part of our lives. But, we don't want that robot nanny. We could create a robot that would take care of an infant or a newborn probably better than a mom or dad can. But we're not going to go there. I mentioned earlier, I'm an optimist. I believe we are going to tap into the potential of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and we're going to get this right. And we're going to live healthier lives. It's going to help us make better decisions and better choices. And wellness will be more fun instead of more stressful. And it will be for everyone, because right now wellness is something that is really for the elite, and there's great potential for that to be something that can be more distributed to everyone and give us, in the end, all more time to relax, which we can probably all use. The last shift starts with, again, culture. And for the first time in U.S. history, the majority of the American workforce is female. And increasingly that, understandably, is changing the family dynamics. So fewer and fewer men at home are the primary provider for the family financially. And so that is shifting the roles of family. And it also shifts a very long-standing tradition around who are the purchase decision makers in families. And that is going to be shaken up quite a bit in the very near future. And we talked earlier in this presentation about college and higher education, and where is that going? It is kind of given the ability for remote learning and just the amount of information that's out there, and that the YouTube University is becoming something. It is kind of interesting. And almost, if you step back, it's almost a little archaic that we send our children off to these large established campuses of learning when that maybe isn't giving them the best, providing them with the best opportunities for education. And maybe education is more about travel and discovery and exploration. And again, learning through different types of online tools and experiences versus at a more structured university. And the last one in this category is around fear of technology. So I mentioned that Gen Z is much, because of how they're growing up, this is becoming something that is just really seamlessly part of their lives. But we still struggle with it. We still struggle as parents in the negative effects of our sedentary lifestyle and the damage that it's doing to our bodies to be connected to screens and to be really just so addicted to screens. And there's a movement around free-range kids, and this was originally around giving children, trusting the children to actually venture out of the house into the wild, and this has really expanded something around not just letting them explore the physical world around them, but just decide who they want to be and what they want to be and what they love, and thinking about that very early in life. being a child shouldn't be formulaic, and families are understanding that technology can play a role in helping children really discover the world around them. So when you bring these three aspects together, we like to think of the last shift, as owning the journey. And this is really about shifting priorities and expectations. And I think for many of the earlier generations, life was more of a path that you saw, and there are expected steps you would take along the way. But today, people are really approaching it very differently. They're thinking less about stuff and the stuff that they buy, and they're thinking more about their experiences. And of course, the sharing economy is a great indicator of this, just how millennials don't want to own or can't afford to own in some cases, things that perhaps other generations could. But we're also living longer, we're working longer, and really companies like ours and perhaps yours should be thinking about, what does this mean when we have offerings that they give us what we want and when we want, and there's no burden. And you can think about this in the auto industry, of course, but also think about this in terms of information. What will sharing information mean for a Gen Z? And it's really something. It's about wanting to own what's right, but just in that moment, and not having it be something that really defines you or starts to burden you. So all of that is to say that we think about these trends and how they ladder up to the shifts, and on the different types of project work we do. We think very closely about how this can impact these future states, because again, you're not going to get to an ideal state or a future state by thinking about the world today or thinking about it strictly through a culture lens, a business lens, or a technology lens. And in the end, what's really most important to me is focusing on the people that we create things for. Pretty much every type of project that we're involved in the end, it's going to be used by a human in one form or another, and really creating that ideal experience, humanizing the technology, and thinking about how to leverage technology in a way that will benefit my kids is what I enjoy doing the most, and in the end, what I think is the most important. So thank you. I really appreciate your time.